Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, and review of the latest episode of Apple TV Plus, Lisey's Story. We're talking episode 7, which was titled No Light, No Spark, where I gotta admit, we finally learned something about Scott's demise, and we see the sisters coming up with their very interesting plan against Jim. We're gonna break it all down here in this spoiler discussion, but before we do so, make sure you all are following me on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, well, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing, and while you're at it, make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you can get the alert from when I drop new content. If you all enjoyed this spoiler-free review of episode 7 of Lisey's Story, well, make sure to give the video a thumbs up, share the video. It helps out the channel a lot, but also appreciate the support. And in the comments, for those that have seen this 7th episode, what'd you think about it? This is the second to last episode before next week's finale. Are you satisfied? Are you left unsatisfied? What are you hoping to see in next week's finale? Let's break it all down in the comments below. So just briefly, initial thoughts of this episode. It was slightly better than the previous 4 episodes, but it still kind of has that pacing issue that I've referred to in the last few weeks. But it was still kind of interesting to kind of finally officially learn what happened to Scott. We know he didn't die from being shot at his book signing that we saw earlier in the season, but we finally learned what happens to him and the pool not healing him, and the wounds reopening, and him being marked, as I mentioned in my review a couple weeks ago, that he got marked by Paul, which I alluded to in my spoiler review, that would probably be something we can assume would happen to him years later, which was the case. But still, my biggest issue with the show is, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's the pacing. It's the way that they're telling the story with the flashbacks and the emotionless moments between the sisters, and then that plan and how it kind of left on a cliffhanger. We'll get to all that, but like I said, I do prefer this episode over the last few episodes, just because I love that we finally learned something about a character that has been taking weeks to learn, but there were still some issues that I have that I want to break down for you all. But again, let me know your initial thoughts on this episode, and let's have a discussion about it in the comments below. So as the synopsis reads for episode 7, 2 years after Scott's death, Lisey must again confront morality, but this time around she has a plan, and it involves Booyah Moon. So she has a plan that, man, I'll just be honest with you all, that plan that her and her sisters come out with was very, very poorly executed. But as we get into the recap, the episode opens up where we see Scott attending this fan event. He's going to be reading some pages from his newest novel, but we see him getting out of the car, saying hello to his fans, and we immediately see he's not doing good. He's coughing. He doesn't look good. He almost has like the similar appearance to how Paul looked after he was, marked by the long boy, which I alluded to in my review a couple weeks ago, that scratch that Paul gave his younger brother Scott was going to play a part into his death, which ended up being true. But we see that he goes to the bathroom. He notices that the shot wounds that he got, which again, I guess I don't understand the timing of it all. Like, how long ago from this event, from when he got shot? Are we talking weeks? Are we talking months? Are we talking years? But nonetheless, the wound starts to reopen on his hand. He opens up his shirt. The wound from him being shot in the chest reopens. So he's panicking. He's dying. He's like, why isn't Booyah Moon? Why isn't the bull working? Why am I not healing? We see that one of the publicists knocks on the door, and he transfers himself, which, by the way, I don't know if he did that, because it seemed like he wasn't aware of Booyah Moon consuming him back into that world. So it's almost like the world welcomed him back in to live again. So I don't know if that was Paul's doing or just him being connected to the universe, but nonetheless, he goes to Booyah Moon, he drinks the bull, and he comes out perfectly fine. And the publisher's like, wait, you were just in there? How do you, again, the Booyah Moon stuff, we really haven't really fully understood the gravity and all the understandings of how this world works. But nonetheless, he seems to be doing well, which leads him to go into the stage. He starts reading a couple pages, or he starts to have a quote from his book that he's preparing to say to his audience. He starts to cough again. The wounds start to reopen. He seems to be wanting to call Lisey, because he probably knows that Lisey can take him back to Booyah Moon, because she seems to be almost more connected to the world than he is, because she seems to have a natural, like he says a couple episodes ago, she's a natural at going to Booyah Moon, but tries to call her, doesn't work out. He inevitably coughs up all the water from the bull, and we see that he is now dying. Cut to Lisey arriving to the hospital, and this is where she's told that he is waiting for her, and he is holding on for he can say his goodbyes to her. We see Scott, this kind of flashback as he's telling Lisey why Booyah Moon isn't being able to heal him. We see when he went to Booyah Moon that he comes across a long boy and he tells Lisey this whole time he knew that when he was cut by his brother that was going to come back to him, as his dad said. And I even alluded to it, like I said in my review a couple weeks ago, that I would imagine that marking that he got was going to catch up to him inevitably. I don't know why it took, I would imagine 30 plus years for it to finally catch up to him. I don't know. Again, does it have anything to do with the fan giving him that particular wand from his book? Is it just a ticking time bomb? Again, they really don't explain why it took so long for him to finally have the effects from being marked by the long boy. We end up seeing them have this kind of one-on-one conversation. They're both, she's crying at this point, Lisey, and he inevitably falls and fades away. But before he dies, he tells her, quote, that in his darkest moments that she ended up saving him. And again, he passes away. I'm not going to lie, the visuals of the background and the whole shot, the setup of the shot was, visually pretty presentable and looked really good from the color scheming and all that stuff. But as far as emotionally speaking, and it has to do with me not being the biggest fan of the show, but just in that moment, I don't feel the love between the characters. Everything has been in the flashback forms. We don't really see them on screen that much. So for me, that moment's supposed to be, this is the 7th episode. This is the second to last episode. We finally learn what happens to Scott. We see these lovers having their last moment, and I felt nothing, which speaks a lot to just me being so detached from the show. But let me know how you all felt in that moment, actually seeing how Scott died. And did you get emotional? Let me know in the comments. We go to the flashback of him, the funeral. We see Lisey packing up the farmhouse, and we see that she sees him, or we as an audience see him taking his place on the steps in Booyah Moon, which, again, when you die, do you always go to Booyah Moon? Are you always going to be on those steps? What is Booyah Moon? We don't know quite yet. Again, if you've read the book, let me know, because I know someone mentioned in the comments that the show, some people feel like the show is doing a better job than illustrating the story than what the book did, and then some other people say that the show is lacking a lot of the details from the book. But let me know again, Booyah Moon, is it really ever fleshed out? Is it really explained in the novel? I had a really good comment from someone that referred to, because I said, is this a Shining almost? Do they have like a Shining ability? And they kind of gave me a really detailed message on that, but I still don't know why the show hasn't really broken down the understanding of Booyah Moon. But as I digress, we cut to seeing Lisey asking Amanda about the people on the steps, and perfect way of the show, she's like, I don't want to talk about it, which is just like an excuse for the show, being like, we don't have time to go over all the people that are there and why they're there. But nonetheless, we see that they have the conversation about Scott not knowing much about the Booyah Moon. They come up with a safe word, which I believe was Green Lawn, and that safe word is for them coming into the situation when Jim's there. They're going to tackle him, and she's going to bring him the Booyah Moon, like I talked about last week. And they have this the dialogue between these three great actresses it's just some of the worst dialogue of the show. They're like, I don't understand. I understand subtle comedy, but they try to throw in jokes and the hockey stick and who signed the hockey stick. It's just like, this isn't the place or the time to have these type of levity within this moment. You're planning to kill this guy. We're dealing with people self-harming themselves. It's just like the jokes really don't land for me, and the dialogue between those three sisters to me are just really, really underwhelming. But we see, and this is very underwhelming. Speaking of underwhelming, the police officer decides to go back to the house because he doesn't have a good feeling about it. We ultimately see Jim shoot him in the face. What a wasted character, that officer. Like, that was just such an underwhelming ending for that character, who really didn't have much to do, but again, just to show that it was just very out of place in my opinion. Let's get down to the meat and potatoes. Jim goes into the house. He talks to Lisey. She's at this point, he cuts up the power in the house. He's wearing his Tom Clancy gear up. You can see her in the night vision, and she's really kind of laying in on him in regards to his insecurities. But more importantly, she brings up that the guy that shot Scott, her husband, that Jim, that they knew each other, which is, I guess, a big revelation. We get so many flashbacks, but we don't get a flashback of who actually killed Scott, or shot Scott. That's something that maybe they'll show in next week's finale. But nonetheless, we see that she's intimidating him. He's pissed off at her, and then she ultimately taps one of Scott's books, turns on the lighthouse, which temporarily blinds him, and then we see Scott actually we got a shot to Scott. I don't know if he had anything to do with this plan or he was just proud of Lisey at this point, but she beats him over the head with the book. We see the sisters come out because she says the safe word, because at this point he's breaking her fingers, breaking her hand. Nonetheless, the sisters don't really do anything because we see Amanda hit him with the stick only to get knocked out. We see Darla shoot him. She only had 3 bullets in the gun. She didn't even realize how many bullets were in the gun. Again, this plan was just horribly executed. Long story short, that scene to me, number one, it was so dark. The choreography within the scene just seems so clumsy. Again, they're not trained assassins, they're not professional killers. I get all that stuff, but it just the way the shot was set up was just poorly. The light, like I said, the lighting was so dark I couldn't really see what was going on, and it just was just not a good scene all around. But as we wrap up the episode, we see Jim choking Lisey almost to the point of death, but it starts to pour in the house and she takes him to Booyah Moon. She's taunting him. First off, he doesn't seem to be at all like, where the hell am I? He's just kind of walking around, still talking to her, saying I'm going to kill you and all that different stuff, which I would think if this is your first time going to this unknown planet, you were just in someone's house and now you're in the forest, I would be freaking out. But nonetheless, they're having this conversation. He tells her that she's Scott's greatest mistake, going on and on and on. We see that obviously she set him up because we know you don't supposed to talk in Booyah Moon, as we assume that she set him up for the long boy, and the long boy starts to come closer to Jim, and she looks up and says, there you go. End of the episode, alluding to Lisey's plan is to have the long boy ultimately take out Jim and obviously leave his body in Booyah Moon. No body, no evidence, even though there's going to be a dead cop outside of your house. Obviously, she didn't know that was a part of the plan, but there's a dead cop. How are you going to explain that? How are you going to explain where this person that killed the cop has gone? So we'll see what next week has to offer. Do we learn more about Jim's relationship with the kid that shot Scott? Do we learn a little bit more about the understanding of Booyah Moon? Do we learn who Scott's parents were, why he's connected to Booyah Moon? And will Lisey be ultimately responsible for the death of that officer, not being able to explain what happened to Jim's body? Let's see if next week gives us all of those answers. But let me know again what you all thought of this episode. Again, I thought that this had at least the reveal of what happened to Scott, but everything else in between, from the dialogue, that poorly executed plan, the poorly executed shot of how they handled the fight of the attack between the 4 characters, and then that cliffhanger to me was just so underwhelming. But we got 1 episode left, and who knows, man? What if next week's episode, the finale, just blows the doors off and it's like the best acting, the best writing, the best story, and a satisfying conclusion to this very, very slow-paced, very underwhelming show so far. But that's just my thoughts on episode 7. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and let's have a dialogue about it in the comment section. As always, if you stuck around to the end of this video, I appreciate you. Make sure, if you haven't already, to like the video, share the video, comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit the bell, that way you don't miss any of my other content. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Hope you're staying safe. We'll see you in the next video.